Most of you already have a good idea about what narcissists do when they're caught. Deny, attack, reverse, play the victim. Those are the manipulations you expect by now. But that's not what this video is about. I want to show you 3 tactics almost no one talks about. The ones that show up after the exposure, after the mask slips, when they realize that you've finally seen them clearly. If you don't see what's happening, you'll walk straight into their next trap, even after catching them red-handed. Knowing what to expect lets you shut it down before it starts. I spent the last 20 years researching self-worth and narcissistic relationships. As a coach, author, and survivor myself, I teach simple systems to help empower you in any situation. In this video, I'll break down 3 things narcissists do when they've been caught, patterns that most people miss, so you can recognize the trap before it's too late, protect your clarity, and shut down the tactics that are designed to keep you hooked. Before we get into the tactics, you need to understand what triggers them. When a narcissist knows they're caught, it means they've noticed a change in your pattern. They see that you're no longer willing to give them the same time, attention, or energy. To them, you've become a threat. You're standing between them and what they want. And to a narcissist, this is an act of war. From that moment on, they're watching, looking for anything they can use. Anything you say or do will be turned against you. The second you confront them, even a subtle pushback, they shift tactics. A narcissist would rather see your life ruined than let you win. By the way, if you're wondering how to assess the level of risk you're dealing with, I've created a free narcissist protection checklist. It's in the description below. So let's get into the 3 tactics that no one talks about. The first thing most people miss when a narcissist gets caught is that none of this is spontaneous. What you're seeing isn't a reaction. It's a performance they already planned. This isn't something that they scramble to create in the moment. It's a program they've been building the entire time. Every time you backed down when they cried, they took note. Every time guilt made you explain yourself, they logged it. Every threat that made you freeze, that's part of the plan now. They've studied you. Some of them literally rehearse it in the mirror, testing tones, working angles, listening to their own voice until they know exactly what will land. So when they're caught, they don't react. They run the script that they built just for you. So let's press pause here because it's easy to fall into this trap. When a narcissist gets caught, you might think the problem is their behavior, like they did something wrong and that's what you're now trying to address. And without realizing it, you start running a strategy in your mind. How to get them to take responsibility, how to get them to see what they've done, how to fix it. But their behavior isn't the problem. The real problem is that you're still hooked. You're still in it, still responding, still trying to get a resolution inside of a system that's designed to keep you stuck. That's what the narcissist is counting on, your engagement. And this is why it works, because you're solving the wrong problem. The second you're trying to get clarity or closure or accountability, you've stepped into the exact outcome they've planned for you. They already know how you're going to respond. They've built their strategy around it. Your effort to fix things becomes the very thing that feeds them. Every explanation, every question, every attempt to make them understand, that's the payoff, not the repair. That's what keeps the supply coming. That's what protects their power. When you're an empathetic person, this is easy to miss because you're focused on what's fair, what's true, or what can be repaired. You assume the breakdown means something. You think that the emotion is real. You don't see that your reaction has already been accounted for and absorbed into the strategy. And that's the trap. You're interpreting their performance through a lens of sincerity, but they're not trying to connect. They're trying to keep you engaged. I've seen this play out with clients too. They catch the narcissist lying or cheating or stealing and immediately get flooded with sobbing apologies, dramatic promises, or sudden threats. Sometimes it's rage, sometimes it's smears, but it's always one purpose behind it: to keep the attention on the narcissist and pull the other person back into managing their chaos. And it works because they're still trying to fix the behavior. They don't realize that that was never the problem, just the trigger. Have you ever finally reached your breaking point only to watch them suddenly become this version of themselves that you'd been hoping for all along? This brings us to the next thing narcissists do when they've been caught. They give you exactly what you've been begging for. When a narcissist gets caught and their usual reactions don't work, when the crying doesn't move you, when the rage doesn't scare you, when the denial doesn't confuse you, they reach for something else. They give you exactly what you've been asking for. The apology that you've waited for years to hear, the money they claimed they didn't have, the therapy they refused, the change they promised and never delivered. They withhold what you want until it becomes absolutely necessary to give it to you. Once you've caught them and they get a sense of a real loss, they're suddenly generous, interested, available all at once. Don't be fooled by this. You're not winning here. This is just the next tactic. They offer exactly what you've asked for because they know it still matters to you. And if it still matters, it will keep you engaged. You have to remember there's only one motive here to secure your time, your attention, and your energy. They want that source of supply. That's the goal. And this is why it works, because you're still holding out hope that something real can come from the damage. So when they hand you an apology, the insight, the promise, right when you're finally ready to walk away or speak up, it looks like a breakthrough. And you see it as an olive branch, but it's not. It's bait. A strategic offer designed to secure supply. You might be the source or you might be the threat. Either way, the goal is the same. Keep the supply protected, keep the system intact. You might miss this because empathy makes you feel what you imagine someone else is feeling. With a narcissist, that imagined emotion isn't coming from them, it's coming from you. So your desire to connect, repair, to believe in growth, that's what you're responding to, and they know it. They use just enough language, just enough vulnerability to activate your empathy. And once that switch is flipped, you're already back in. When I finally caught my ex-husband and told him I was filing for divorce, he tried everything to get me to stay. He cried, he begged, he apologized, he guilted me. None of it worked. A few days later, in a last-ditch effort to avoid being kicked out, he quietly pulled one of my coaching books off the shelf and started journaling at the kitchen table. He said it was exactly what he needed. He said he finally realized the mistakes he'd made. He apologized for not being interested in my work, for never taking personal growth seriously. And then he carefully placed the dagger in the softest part of my heart. He asked if I would help him work through the exercise. That was the hook. He used exactly what I'd been begging for. Not to reconnect with me, but to keep me under control. And it almost worked, because it came wrapped in everything I still wanted to believe. This brings us to the next thing narcissists do when they've been caught. They show you how far from reality they've always been. Narcissists don't live a life based on universal rules. To them, facts don't exist. Truth doesn't matter. Everything is flexible. Everything is bendable to their will. They live in a fantasy of their own making, and they always expect you to go along with it. When you catch them, it's not that they start fabricating a new reality. It's that their fictional narrative becomes exposed. They go through life as if they're writing a science fiction novel where everyone and everything functions to serve the main character, themselves. To them, if there's a problem with the timeline, the behavior, or the beliefs of the sub-characters, the story just needs to be rewritten to fix the issue. You'll hear them say things like that never happened, or refer to conversations that didn't exist, or flip timelines, or rewrite motives, erase proof. They don't flinch because they never believed in facts to begin with. They believe in tactics. Whatever keeps the fantasy intact is what becomes true. And this works because your brain is wired to find logic even when there is none. When someone looks you in the eye and says something with total certainty, your mind will start going, wait, what? How is that making sense? And you try to track the contradictions and solve the timeline and prove what actually happened. But the moment you do that, you're already inside their fantasy. You're using your logic to try to navigate something that was never built on logic in the first place. That's what makes it work. You think you're solving for truth, but you've been pulled into a world where truth doesn't exist. Empathetic people fall for this because they assume everyone's working with the same rules. If something doesn't add up, they try to fix it, or if someone's confused, they try to clarify. They don't see that the confusion is the tactic. For example, when I was little, I remember my mom broke a mug while she was doing dishes, and I was outside playing, nowhere near the kitchen. Enraged, she called me into the kitchen and accused me of breaking the mug. I pleaded with her, trying to explain that I didn't break it. And she stared at me and said, "Are you calling me a liar?" And I remember freezing. I knew I hadn't done it, but she was so scary and so aggressive. I realized it was just easier to say I did it than to try to keep hold of the truth. What happened in that moment didn't matter. What mattered was that I needed to agree with her version of the story. What happens in those moments isn't what matters. What happens is that you choose to lose your version of truth and slip into the narcissist narrative, which is something we cannot allow anymore. Thanks so much for watching. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this one. Yep, right there on the screen. Go ahead and click it. It dives deeper into spotting narcissists, avoiding their traps, and building boundaries that actually work. Don't miss it. It's your next step towards the life you deserve. I'll see you over there. Okay, bye.